Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Gaia Nova. When Gaia Nova was born, her father had a poetic dream that his daughter was blessed with the spirit of the earth and destined to be the first female to lead the tribe. When she grew up, she lived up to the expectations, faster and bigger than the rest, fiercer than anyone else. And so Gaia Nova is the newest and latest Earth Legendary monster, and as of the time recording this video, there's a total of 35 Earth Legendary monsters, so I'm going to be comparing Gaia Nova to those monsters. So Gaia Nova has a power of 3,355, and unfortunately this is rather low for Earth Legendary monsters. This actually puts her in 24th place, and while this power may be extremely low, this monster is actually an attacker, which I know it just seems weird with the low power, but just wait until we get into the skills and you'll see for yourself why she's an attacker. As for her life, she has 25,032, which is actually extremely bad for an Earth Legendary monster. This actually places her tied for 33rd place with Tessidae. That's right, the only monster that has a lower life than Gaia Nova or Tessidae is Osteoclast. So a low power and a low life so far. But then we get what's one of the most amazing speeds for Earth Legendary monsters, 3,476. This makes her tied for 2nd place, and she's tied with monsters like Hydrotilla the Riftmaker, that's right, the Nemesis monster, and Hiram the Tenacious, the VIP monster, and Tessidae, the Premier monster. And the only monster faster than everyone I just mentioned is Baba Yaga, who has a speed of 3,498. So Gaia Nova, a low power, an extremely low life, but an incredible amazing speed. And to top it all off, this monster has Hardened. All status effects have a 20% less accuracy against it. And I don't know, for some reason I was just thinking this monster was going to have Mountain, because she looks like a darn mountain. But you know, it's all good I guess, because you guys have probably heard me say multiple times already, Hardened is like the best trait to have. You know, if you're not a general and have tough, if you're not a VIP or Nemesis monster and have Bulwark, having Hardened really is the best thing, considering there's all these abstract effects that can land on you, Time Stop, Hacked, Corruption, Mega Stun. It's just better to have Hardened, even if it's only a 20% chance, just something that can protect you from everything going on in the game. And then lastly, you should know that this monster is also in the female book, so this is her competition in the female book, and she's also in the Good Legions book, and right now there's 53 legendary monsters in the Good Legions book, so this is her competition right there. And lastly, she's in the Superheroes book, and in the Superheroes there's only 23 legendary monsters, so her competition isn't that bad, but she is going up against some tough opponents like Cassandra, Grigors of Lyria, and of course Voltic. And so with all that out of the way, let's move on to skills. Her ultimate attack is called First Quake, deals massive earth damage to all enemies, applies stun to all enemies. And so here we have an AoE that deals 70 earth-based damage to all of the enemy monsters, and it's an AoE stun. It's a pretty straightforward attack. I already mentioned this monster as an attacker, so as you can imagine this skill is going to be dealing quite a bit of damage, and on the off chance that any monster does survive, they're at least going to be immobilized by stun if they're not immune to it. So it's a pretty straightforward ultimate, nothing too flashy, nothing too special about it, so let's move on to skills group 1. And the reason I want to talk about skills group 1 is because this monster has an extra turn skill in skills group 1 called Mudslide. Gives 50% of stamina to itself, gives 1 extra turn to itself, requires cooldown. This is a fantastic attack. It costs 21 stamina, which doesn't matter because you're going to regain 50% of your stamina, so you're going to get 70 stamina back. So it's a net gain of 49 stamina. However, this has a high fortune cooldown, which might be one reason against running this skill. And of course, like I mentioned already, it gives you an extra turn. So what I really like about Mudslide is if you happen to get possessed, you do have Hardened, however, you know, you can still get penetrated with possession or hacked or corruption. So if you do happen to get possessed, you can easily just do Mudslide, give yourself an extra turn, give yourself your full stamina, so it's almost like you never did an attack, and then you can proceed to attack with your other skills, and you have other extra turn skills that you can utilize. And considering this monster is an earth monster that is bound to go up against the Baba Yaga who can land possession, this would be a really great strategy, and it's one reason you might want to consider using Mudslide. I gotta talk about the other skills in skills group 2 and 3 before I can come back to talking about Mudslide, because there is a huge downside this monster has. So let's just move on to skills group 2, Earth Claws. Deals heavy earth damage to one enemy, 45 damage, 20 stamina cost, no cooldown. The cool thing about this skill is the no cooldown and the extremely low stamina cost of 20. It deals 45 earth based damage, which isn't too much, especially considering her low power, so that's another downside. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward attack. Let's move on to Gravel Dust. Gravel Dust deals moderate earth damage to one enemy, and it applies quicksand to one enemy, and it requires a cooldown. So 40 damage, earth based attack, 26 stamina, 1 turn cooldown, but as an added plus, it applies quicksand. So compared to Earth Claws, you get a 1 turn cooldown, and it costs an extra 6 stamina, but it also applies quicksand. And so Gravel Dust may be a better skill than Earth Claws. But as for whether or not you may want to run it, again, we still need to talk about the other skills before we can come back to that. Next up we have Rock Slide. Deals moderate earth special damage to one enemy, gives 1 extra turn to itself, requires cooldown. So this skill deals 35 special base damage to a single enemy monster, it costs 24 stamina, and has a high fortune cooldown, but it does give you an extra turn. And before I talk more about this skill, let me just move on over to skills group 3. I think we're going to get all of the skills out of the way, then we can talk about skill sets. So Clay Claws deals heavier damage to one enemy, 50 damage, 31 stamina cost, no cooldown. So I guess you can consider Clay Claws as an upgraded version of Earth Claws. It deals more damage, 5 more damage. However, look at that stamina cost, 11 more stamina. I personally don't like that, and if I have to pick between any of these two skills, I might just go with Earth Claws. But anyhow, moving on, Massive Gravel Dust. Deals moderate earth damage to all enemies, applies quicksand to all enemies, requires cooldown. Here we have an earth-based AoE that deals 35 damage to all of the enemy monsters, 29 stamina, 2 turn cooldown, and it's an AoE quicksand. This is definitely a must-have in my opinion, especially considering the fact you're an earth monster and earth monsters tend to be really tanky. This is just a really great way to take away some of their life. And also currently no monster in the game with the exception of the artifact monsters and totem, no one is immune to quicksand, so it's just a really great skill to have. And then last but not least we have Avalanche, deals low special damage to all enemies, gives 1 extra turn to attack, requires cooldown. So this skill deals 25 special base damage to all of the enemy monsters, costs 30 stamina, and it has a high 5 turn cooldown, but you do get an extra turn. And so now that all of the skills are out of the way, let's discuss a possible skill set for this monster. You probably noticed she has Avalanche that gives you an extra turn, Rock Slide that gives you an extra turn, Mud Slide that gives you an extra turn, and then this amazing Massive Gravel Dust that is an AoE Quicksand, which, if you were to use all of these skills, just take a look at the cooldowns. If you start the game off with Avalanche, that's 5, and then use Rock Slide, that's 4, which means Avalanche will have a 4 turn cooldown. You get your extra turn, you do Mud Slide, that's 4. So Rock Slide will be at 3, Avalanche will be at 3, and then use Massive Gravel Dust, that has a 2 turn cooldown. On your next turn, all of your skills are going to be on a cooldown. You may have all the stamina in the world to do whatever attack you want to, but you're going to be out of skills to do, and I think even on the next turn you're going to have no skills to do because they're all going to be on a cooldown. Even if you just do Avalanche, then Rock Slide, then Massive Gravel Dust, and on the next turn use Mud Slide, guess what? Massive Gravel Dust is still going to have a 1 turn cooldown, so you won't be able to use it. So this monster is kind of like a one-hit wonder, or one-turn wonder. After you utilize Avalanche, Rock Slide, and Massive Gravel Dust, you're pretty much done for. You can't do anything. Which is why I said that some people might not want to run Mud Slide, because this monster is an attacker, so you're going to give this monster 1 speed rune and 2 strength runes. I think that's plenty good, considering she has a fast-paced speed. She's going to be able to outspeed just about any other earth monster that's running an equivalent level speed rune. So 1 speed, 2 strength. And if it's the case that you can't do Avalanche, Rock Slide, Massive Gravel Dust, and on the next turn do another attack, then if you forego running Mud Slide, you'll be able to utilize another skill like Clay Claws or Gravel Dust. That's really up to you. Or actually wait, I'm having second thoughts. Clay Claws, I think I mentioned that I hate that 31 stamina cost, whereas Earth Claws has a 20 stamina cost, and it's only a 5 damage difference. Let's see, Avalanche, that's 30, Rock Slide, that's 24, that's 54, Massive Gravel Dust is 29, which would be 83, which means after you use these 3 attacks, you only have 57 stamina. So on the next turn, Clay Claws, that would drain you 31 stamina. You wouldn't be able to do anything on the next turn. You know what, I think if I was to not run Mud Slide, I would run Avalanche, Massive Gravel Dust, Rock Slide, and Earth Claws. Sorry if that was confusing, but that would be my skill set if you don't want to run Mud Slide. Because the main thing against running Mud Slide is that after you do Avalanche and Rock Slide and Massive Gravel Dust, you're going to have no cooldowns to do an attack for the next 2 turns. So that's really unfortunate. However, that only really applies if you don't finish off the enemy monsters. Let's take a look at how much damage this monster can actually deal. Avalanche will deal 25 damage to all of the enemy monsters. Rock Slide will deal 35 damage to a single enemy monster, which means that after you do Avalanche and Rock Slide, one enemy monster is going to be taking 60 damage, 60 special base damage, and the other 2 monsters are going to be taking 25 special base damage. And then you finish off with Massive Gravel Dust, that's going to deal 35 damage to all of the enemy monsters. So what does this mean? This means that one individual monster is going to take 95 damage, assuming they're not an earth-based monster. If they're a thunder-based monster, they'll take more damage obviously. But let's just say it's a non-earth-based monster. They're going to take 95 damage, while the other 2 monsters, they're going to take Avalanche and Massive Gravel Dust, which is 60 damage. So as soon as this monster gets 1 turn in, one enemy monster takes 95 damage, the other 2 monsters take 60 damage, and everyone gets quicksand, assuming your AoEs land, assuming your single hit lands obviously. But that's crazy! 95 damage to a single enemy monster, 60 damage to the other 2 monsters, and everyone has quicksand? That is insane. And by that logic, you can argue whether you really even need to run one of these 0 cooldown skills, Clay Claws, Earth Claws, or maybe even Gravel Dust, in which case you could just go back to running Mud Slide, which personally, if I was to get this monster, that's what I would do. I hate the fact that you can't do anything after that amazing combo I just talked about, but I'm fine with that. I would run Mud Slide still, I would run Rock Slide, I would run Avalanche, and I would run Massive Gravel Dust. And then Mud Slide, I would just use it as a just in case, if I do get possessed, assuming you don't run Mud Slide, if you're not running possessed, then you're going to have to Avalanche your team, or you're going to have to Rock Slide your team, which reduces the amount of damage you can deal to the enemy. So I'd rather just go into a game where the enemy maybe does AoE possession. I'm fine with that. I'll do Mudslide, give myself an extra turn, and I can go back to doing my combo. I can go back to doing Avalanche, Rock Slide, Massive Gravel Dust, and by then hopefully the enemy will be dead. But that's just my personal opinion on what I would do if I was to get Gaia Nova. And with that being said, that is actually going to conclude my analysis on Gaia Nova. So now I want to hear from all of you guys. What do you guys think about this monster? How do you think she compares to the other Earth monsters? As I already mentioned, she has a low power, a low life, but an incredible speed, and her low power doesn't matter too much considering the amount of damage she can do from her skills. But how do you guys think she compares to them? And also, how well do you think this monster does in the book she's in? You know, considering this monster is in the female and the superheroes book, if the enemy has a Xyla or Voltic on defense, then you do have that Earth Elemental advantage over them. So just, yeah, I want to hear from all of you guys. How do you think she compares to her own book and to her own elements? And regardless of whether or not you have this monster, let me know what skill set would you run. Would you be the kind of person that runs Mudslide, or would you be the kind of person that doesn't run Mudslide, and why or why not would you choose that skill? And with that being said, I hope you all really enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below, and like always, remember to dream big and pursue your passions.